And you need to see that this enhanced interrogation tactic isn't an act of torture, it's something else. When in reality, it is an act of torture, right? But you cannot acknowledge that it's an act of torture. And it goes deeper than you cannot acknowledge it publicly. It takes a certain type of individual even to acknowledge it privately. If I am in fact a torturer, and I've written on this creatively in my novel, Daughters of the Surrogate Mother, I published it in 2005. I created a character, and the whole point of the character was like 50 pages of an act of torture to address precisely these concepts, right? But I did it creatively so that people would have access to sort of the idea. And this act of torture goes on and on and on. It takes an individual. The vast majority of people will have to tell themselves, the torturer, the person inflicting the act of torture, probably has to tell himself, this, what I'm doing now isn't an act of torture. I actually believe, I've bought into this lie, if you will, that what I'm doing isn't an act of torture. This is an enhanced interrogation tactic that I'm using. And insofar as I can sort of believe that ideology, insofar as I can absorb that ideology, it then facilitates the process. This is not to say that there aren't people who fully recognize what the act is, fully recognize that the act really isn't an act of enhanced interrogation, that it is an act of torture, and would still participate in torturing this individual, right? And so don't think that there's this real horribly gross generalization within many people who do sort of like obedience to authority analysis and psychological analysis, that you first have to depersonalize the victim in order to torture them. That's not true, right? In some instances, you do need to depersonalize the victim. In other instances, you just have to find the right person and be like, listen, this is a threat to national security. Go interrogate this person. You mean torture him? No. Well, it's the same as torture. You want me to torture him? I'll torture him, right? So the idea that, as you can see, it's very complicated, right? The idea that it is a denial isn't just a public denial. In a very real sense, for the most part, the individual torturer has to buy into the lie that I am denying that what I'm actually doing is an act of torture. It's an act of interrogation, which is not to say that all torturers have to accept that, because there are obviously sadists and they'll do it just for the fun. And then there are individuals who sort of ideologically, rationally just will participate in the act of torture without having to be coerced or told that it's enhanced interrogation. So very, very complicated sort of motivations behind interpretive denial. Okay, the last level of denial is what's known as implicatory denial. Implicatory denial, and the first part, this is 3A. First part, the state acknowledges instances of torture but places blame on aberrant agents, right? So the state is going to say, listen, you present allegations of torture. Wow, that is undeniable. That is definitely an instance of torture. However, we didn't do it. And this is where people in the black community will understand this. See, what happened was, right? See, what happened was we contracted out that particular unit to some subsidiary contractor, and I wasn't aware that they were doing that. I'm so glad you brought this to me, because now we can prosecute those subsidiary contractors, right? You were not supposed to participate in an act of torture, and there you were. Now, assuming that this is a denial, since this is what we're talking about, it's sort of like the Mission Impossible movie, right? The Mission Impossible movie, the individual that represents the status quo presents the agent with the mission and says, hey, let me let you know, here's your mission, you need to kill all these people, you need to do all this other stuff. However, if you get caught, we're going to deny the fact that we ever sent you on this mission. Not only are we going to deny the fact that we sent you on the mission, we're going to prosecute you as though we did not send you on this mission. So not only is it the case that you better do what you do and make sure that it's secret, but if it comes to light that this happens, then we're going to prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. And that you got to be a certain type of individual to take a job like that. You know, in a sense, you really got to be about your business to take a job like that. So you say, hey, not a problem. Wire the money to the account. I'll start torturing these people. If I get caught, I recognize that I'm going to be at the whim of the court. And this is what happens. So what happens in implicatory denial is that there isn't a denial of the act, right? Before, what we've tried to do is we've either denied the act outright or we've reinterpreted the act as not being an instance of torture. In the last level, we recognize and acknowledge that it is an act of torture. The denial is that it was aberrant, subcontracted, you know, non-governmental or non-political or non-whatever units that participated in the act, not us, right? So it's they tortured, not us, right? We put others tortured. We didn't participate in the act of torture, others did. And then 3B is that the state holds these agents responsible for acts of torture and denies any participation. As I said before, you can conceptually imagine this. We've seen this in film time and time again. As I said before, you go to Mission Impossible guy, you say, I think it was Tom Cruise, right? So you go to Tom Cruise, you say, hey, Tom Cruise, I need you to torture sorry, Tom Cruise, right? But you go to Tom Cruise, you say, Tom Cruise, I need you to torture, and I'm not making light of the situation, but I really want to take this heady sort of conceptual account and make it obviously, you know, obviously super easy to understand, undeniably easy to understand. That's the point of education. So, hey, Tom Cruise, I need you to torture these people. I need your firm to torture these people. We're going to contract you guys. Here's the money. Here's what the information we need. I don't care what you do. As a matter of fact, I don't even want to know what you're going to do. But we know you do what you do best. So do what you do best and get us the results that we want. So in fairness to the state really doesn't know what happens, right? You know, best case scenario, in a worst case. So he goes and he does, and his firm does, and not Tom Cruise now, because that'd just be horrible. I apologize, Tom Cruise, but then, you know, they do what they do, knowing that if they get caught, the state is going to deny participation. So the images surface, right? If it's the case of Abu Ghraib, and I'm not saying that this is what ensued, but just to make it clear, then the images surface. And the people who contracted are like, holy crap, I really didn't know that that's what they were doing. So it's just as shocked to me as it is to everybody else. I can't believe this leaked out. This is a huge problem. Everybody's on the phone. You come back and we say, no, we're denying participation because I didn't know. I'm just as shocked as the general public is that this is what you were doing. I didn't think you were doing this. How could you possibly do this? Right? Now there's repercussions, there's consequences for your acts. Hold on, phone. There are consequences for your acts, and insofar as there are consequences for your acts, we're going to hold you, responsible, and you're going to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. So, general public, I apologize. We did not know. Next time, we'll make sure that that level of interrogation is handled by us. Once bitten, twice shy, as we say in Jamaica, right? So the three different levels, again, lastly, literal denial, where the act of torture is denied itself. Interpretive denial, where the act of torture is interpreted to be something else. And then finally, implicatory denial, where the act of torture is not denied, but the blame is shifted to some third party. Okay, so those are the three levels of denial. Okay, next is international law and torture, and I want to begin with a quote about international law and torture. The international criminalization of torture is inextricable from the history of human rights. The international criminalization of torture is inextricable from the history of human rights. And there's no need to necessarily write all of these points down, but one, people are subjects of states, obviously. Two, states are subjects of international law. This was debatable a bit. There was a sense in which George W. Bush said that he would not allow the Constitution of America to be subordinated by the United Nations and such, blah, 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 right? So, you know, sort of contested debate, but for the most part, people are subject to states states are subject to international law, therefore, by sort of syllogism, people are subject to international law. International law criminalizes torture, right, which we know it does. So since states are subject to international law, now here's where it gets complicated, right? But since states are subject to international law, those states participating in torture are subject to international criminalization, right? So if you participate, you're subject to international criminalization, which is precisely the reason why you want to select one of the three methods of denial. In the event that we get caught, prior to even acting on the instance of torture, in the boardroom, obviously in secret, never in public, you say, hey, we know what's going to happen if this ever leaks. Let's make sure it never leaks. But if it does, here's what we have to choose from. We can do a literal denial. We can do an interpretive denial. We can do an implicatory denial. What do you think is best? I think implicatory would be better. I think interpretive might be better. Well, direct won't be blah, 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 right? You strategize it. It becomes part of the strategy. Why? Because in line 5, torture, those states participating in torture are subject to international criminalization, and we don't want that. The state can't afford that. So, quote, number 6, the prohibition of torture is customary international law and therefore attaches universal jurisdiction. Universal jurisdiction means that if a perpetrator is not prosecuted in his or her own country, he or she can be prosecuted in any competent legal system anywhere in the world. Right? So even if you let it slide in your country and your government lets it slide that you were a torturer, and let's say it gets out that you in fact are a torturer, and this is, now that I mentioned this is crazy, because I think one of the dudes from Abu Ghraib, I forget his name, I think he just got out of prison. He served like a 6-year or 7-year prison sentence. I think he just got out. And it would be extremely interesting to see how his foreign travels are going to unfold in the next coming years, right? He's not going to be, he's in a sense been prosecuted here in the States, but since his acts of torture have been documented, if he travels abroad, there is a possibility that a state could evoke universal jurisdiction. Now, I'm not a law professor, I don't know this for a fact, just conceptually, that they could invoke universal jurisdiction and he could be incarcerated somewhere abroad, right? That is something that I don't know. So yes, universal jurisdiction becomes very, very problematic in that regard. Is that it? Wow, that's 5.0. That was pretty quick actually. I thought I had more. So I'm going to stop there because 5.1 is relatively long actually, and I need time to go into that, which I don't have now because I've been talking for 45 minutes. So with that, I want to thank you for watching my videos. Just to recap really quick, I don't think I need to because I think it was clear. 3 modes of denial in the discussion of torture. You have direct denial, sort of bold-faced, just saying it didn't happen, literally saying this is not an act of denial. You have interpretive denial, reframing the act of torture as something else. You have implicatory denial. And what we recognize is that there's universal condemnation, international condemnation of human rights abuses with respect to torture. And those people who have been identified as torturers do face serious troubles, with serious problems in their travel. Legal problems in their travel? Do they decide to travel? Also, with respect to torture, the conception of torture, as I said before, it is something that the assumption was a relic of the past. Civilized societies don't torture. Uncivilized societies do torture. And the reality is that when we discuss torture, we can't be so naive to think that it doesn't occur. What happens is that publicly you put on the face of you should never torture. It's a horrible thing to do. When privately you use it as a tool of interrogation. You don't do it for the sadistic, I guess the justification is you're not doing it for sadism in and of itself, but you are using acts of demoralization, ritualized abuse, and ritualized psychological violations, and drugging, and what have you, in order to gain information, violation of Kant's categorical imperative, and thus problematic. So hopefully this gets the ball rolling for torture. I'm going to talk a lot about torture in the upcoming series, in the upcoming hours. Devoted quite a bit of time to analyzing various complexities of torture. And we will look at the relationship between torture and human rights violations in more detail. With that, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch my videos. I'm Dr. Jason J. Campbell. Have a good day.